Narrow escape from crashing right after takeoff. What happened? Emirates 777. An inquiry is underway into a December 20th, 2021 incident involving an Emirates Boeing 777-300 that failed to properly climb out during takeoff from Dubai International Airport, DXB. Shortly after takeoff from Dubai, the Emirates Boeing 777 destined for Washington, D.C. nearly collided with the ground. The flight crew failed to set a climb, resulting in the flight director, a device similar to an autopilot, nearly crashing into the earth shortly after takeoff. What just happened? Let's find out in this episode. Hello everyone, welcome to Mayday Investigation, your aviation-friendly channel where we walk you through high-profile air disasters to uncover how and why they happened. So subscribe now to climb into the cockpit and press the bell icon for an experience you won't soon forget. With that being said, let's take off. Major focus on these issues tends to result in a more proportionate reaction to safety measures, which is beneficial to everyone who flies. Airlines, on the other hand, dislike attention for obvious reasons. When these non-fatal occurrences occur, paperwork is often limited and mum's the word, enhancing the likelihood of deniability. According to unconfirmed reports, as Emirates Boeing 777 bound for Washington, D.C. nearly collided with the ground after takeoff from Dubai, DXB, on December 20th, after the flight crew failed to set a climb, resulting in the flight director properly, a system similar to autopilot nearly plunging the aircraft into the ground after takeoff. Based on data from Flight Radar 24 and sources close to the incident, here is what is thought to be true about this incident. Because this flight was heading for Washington, D.C., there will also be an FAA record. Let's take a look at the details. The flight was carrying 282 passengers and 16 crew members and 2 pilots. 30 to 32 of them were injured. 6 crew members had minor injuries while 4 crew members got serious injuries. What happened when this Emirates line took off? The flight in question in Emirates EK231, which was due to depart at 2:25 a.m. on Monday, December 30th, 2021 from Dubai DXB to Washington Dulles, IAD, the flight was flown by one of Emirates' newest Boeing 777-300ERs registered A6EQI. The previous crew had set the height in the flight director system, which controls the autopilot, to 0. The crew on this flight was meant to, but did not change the altitude to 4,000 feet, which is a customary altitude to first climb to after departure. During the flight, the pilot elected to follow what the flight director was showing, an altitude of 0 feet. While the plane normally rots at a considerably slower speed, it is still on the ground at 216 knots. It even overran the usual runway area, taking off only in the runway safety area. The plane was already flying over buildings at 75 feet altitude with a minimum speed of 234 knots. The plane hardly gained altitude and was only 175 feet above the ground when it reached a speed of 262 knots. In a comparison at such a height, the plane would normally fly at far under 200 knots and climb significantly faster. While it would be customary to return to the airport to assess damage when anything like this occurs, given the possibility of overspeed with the flaps, as well as the possible damage if the aircraft unintentionally collided with something, the pilots chose to continue to Washington. According to my knowledge, the US Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, is investigating this occurrence, and at least 2 of the pilots at the controls have been suspended, if not dismissed. The crew's utter lack of control of the plane sticks out the most in this case. Instead of flying the plane, the crew was handling the computers. Emirates takeoff near miss. According to FR24 data, Emirates Flight 231 from Dubai, DXB to Washington, D.C., IAD, suffered a possibly major anomaly during takeoff from Dubai on December 20th. According to unconfirmed accounts from the scene, which appear to be backed by data from Flight Radar 24 and other sites, the flight crew failed to change the takeoff climb height, which was set at 0 feet rather than 4,000 feet. This allegedly forced the flight director of the Boeing 777 to tip the plane back toward the ground during a critical time of the flight. According to Flight Radar 24 data, the plane got as low as 175 feet. As a result, the jet reportedly hit 262 kts, approximately 301 miles per hour, at an altitude of 175 feet over the city point, Deira, which is far from near to the airport in terms of takeoff. By then, a plane should be thousands of feet above the land. The flight crew is said to have followed the flight director until it became evident that something was seriously wrong when the plane approached the land. The system should have been set at 4,000 feet for the takeoff ascent, but it was allegedly put to 0 and not corrected. Overspeed, a reason to be wary. Planes rarely reach those speeds with their gear or flaps down or at low altitudes. These potentially dangerous situations are referred to as overspeed concerns. If the event in issue did occur, the plane should have returned to Dubai for structural checks based only on overspeed. High speeds at low altitude, with flaps and gear down, might have produced damage that could have been fatal during flight. Instead, the plane flew for around 14 hours. Finally, concerns about overspeed structural damage prompted an examination in Washington, causing the return trip to be delayed by more than 3 hours. Overspeeding an airplane can cause cracks, structural failures, or problems with vital flight systems. After an assessment, it was determined that no severe structural or system damage happened to the aircraft during the takeoff event, and the flight returned safely from Washington to Dubai. However, doubts remain regarding whether it should have completed its outbound flight to Washington, D.C., given the risk of damage sustained during what was most definitely an overspeed on takeoff, and the potentially fatal miscalculation, of course, if this occurred. A fortunate ending. According to sources, the 4 flight crew members who flew the near-miss flight were all let go by Emirates as a result of the potentially disastrous incident and subsequent decision to continue flying despite the possibility of overspeed damage to the flaps or landing gear as a result of the error. No one was injured on the EK-231 aircraft in question, and the Boeing 777's return flight from Washington Dulles to Dubai was only delayed by 3 hours and 15 minutes due to the overspeed check. Initial suspicions point to the crew's recency, which has been a persistent issue for airlines due to the pandemic's stop-start character. As more restrictions are imposed, demand falls. Restrictions are lifted, demand surges, and airlines are unable to meet demand. That is apparently what occurred. But an odd sequence of events in which a flight crew observed a takeoff height of 0 feet on the flight director and then failed to change it to 4,000 feet is extremely concerning for an airline with a mainly stellar safety record. To date, no Emirates flight has had a fatal passenger crash. Emirates has issued a message to its pilots. While Emirates has not yet issued an official statement regarding this incident, the airline did issue the following alert to pilots on Monday, presumably referencing the occurrence. There are no FCOM formal procedure requirements for changing the MCP after landing or shutdown. The MCP altitude window has once been set to the airport elevation, which may cause issues on the subsequent departure. Crews are not allowed to set the airport elevation on the MCP after landing or shutting down. In other words, Emirates instructs pilots not to set the altitude to 0 on approach in case the following crew does not change it. The incident was so dangerous that Emirates sent a NOTAM, a notification to crews telling them that even though the previous crew left an anomaly altitude of 0, that was most likely not what was meant for takeoff, it's a concerning error. As a result, the plane passed over the usual stretch of the runway and then flew at a very low height while traveling very quickly. This must have been terrifying for everyone on board, as well as those on the ground who were awake or who were woken up by the noise of such a low aircraft. Let's hope airlines take notice and strive properly to restrain flight crews as they return to work after a long and emotional break. An unavoidable calamity is the last thing that travel recovery needs. So, did the story give you chills? What did you think about this incident? Share your thoughts in the comments. That wraps up our video for today. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Press the bell icon to never miss breathtaking aviation stories. See you soon. Until then,